Welcome, and we're back with another episode of My Conversation Corner. Today, we're interviewing my father. Has many years of experience doing many different things. Um, a big person that I look up to. I call him. He is definitely the person that I strive to be every day, and he's put a great example in front of me. And I just want to give him an opportunity to speak on some of the things that happened in his life that have impacted him and created the guy that we are looking at today. So here we are, my dad, James Dowdy. How you doing, Dad?
Good, good.
So I kind of wanted to talk to you about a few things that I kind of don't know the full story on because you talk about them and we've gone through these conversations over the years, but we never really had this opportunity to really put the story together cohesively. So let's get into it. From what I know and all the conversations that we've had and everything that I know about you, you're originally from Ohio. So let's talk about a little bit of your life in Ohio in your high school years. Like, where did it start? What were you doing?
Well, um, I was born in the east side of Ohio, of Columbus, Ohio.
Mhm.
However, I grew up in the north side um, with my mother and my grandmother and my brother.
Okay.
We lived in a single family home, very large home, um, on North 6th Street. The address was 1260 North 6th Street. I remember it so well.
Mhm.
I grew up about a half a block from the 6th Street and 6th Avenue playground.
Okay.
So that was really where I spent most of my summers in the playground. Um, we lived closer to the playground than the playground manager. Her name was Miss Lynch, and she would always come down the street, usually with a shopping bags of stuff for crafts and different things from her house. And once she passed our house, then we were allowed to go to the playground. And the playground was about a half a block on the opposite side of the street. But our street it was two sides to it because there was a boulevard in between the two streets. And we used the street as a kid. I used the street as a track. We used to race around the boulevard, and then we would play football and in the boulevard because it was about 12, 14 feet wide and about a block long.
Sure.
We also played marbles, which nobody does today. That was big then because you had your collection of marbles and you would compete for more marbles and you either lose or compete. And we would go to the playground, spend most of our day in the playground. We'd go home for lunch. My mother worked, but my grandmother, she was always there. We'd fix our lunch. And we had a good time in the playground. It was a neighborhood. It was very, the neighbors pretty much knew one another. We'd been there for years. But they were all black.
Okay.
We were in a neighborhood and about 5, 6 blocks either way, there was just black families.
Right.
And that's where I basically got involved with athletics. There was a basketball court there that we played. It was dirt floor. Mm-hmm. There was a baseball field there and a field house where you could play checkers and different things like that. But we would play a game called Any Bounce or Fly.
Any bounce or fly.
And it was called that because whoever was batting could bat as long as someone didn't catch the ball either on a bounce or on the fly.
Okay.
And that was usually a lot of fun. We played that usually in the evening after the sun had gone down. So it wasn't very hot. And then the guys would always compete for catching the ball, because if you caught the ball, then you could give the bat the opportunity to play the bat to any girl that you liked or whoever. And so that was kind of a prize that you could give to your girlfriend or somebody you were interested in.
Okay, I see the game working. I see the game working. All right.
Yes. Um, and then after I left junior high, elementary school, I went to junior high school. I went to Indianola Junior High School.
Okay.
And it was about, I'd say about 15, 20 blocks from my house. And so I played basketball there. And then it was a large field. And one Saturday, with the assistance of the track coach, we literally dug a track.
Okay.
And we put lanes in it. We also developed a high jumping pit. And I broke my arm in the high jumping pit because instead of putting hay in the pit to make it, when you went over the bar, you had a shorter distance to fall. We didn't have enough hay in it, and so we had a longer distance to fall. And I fell on my right arm, and fractured it.
Ah.
And so I was in a cast for about 6 weeks, I think, something like that. But the track was a lot of fun because teams, junior high school teams, would compete, and it was one of the few schools that had a full track that you could run on.
And did you run track at all?
Yes, I always ran. I ran track even before that, when I was a young kid. Before in junior high school, in elementary school, I ran barefooted in the Junior Olympics.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, I ran the 100 and 220, and believe it or not, I ran in my stocking feet because we weren't well off enough to buy track shoes.
Yeah.
I was faster than most kids, but the real track people were faster than I was.
Now, give me an aspect of what year this was.
This was probably about 1952 or 53, somewhere around there. Because see, I was born in 1940, and in 1952, 53, I was 12, 13 years old, and I was always a good runner. I was pretty fast. I wasn't extremely fast, but I was faster than most kids my age, and I was stronger than most kids my age. And then in junior high school, I played a little baseball, but I didn't play a lot, primarily because I got kicked off the team.
What did you do?
I kissed a girl on the cheek. And it wasn't even my girlfriend. It was really a friend of my mother's, a daughter of my mother's friend.
Right. Okay.
And she said something to me coming in and out of recess, and I kissed her on the cheek, and I got kicked off the baseball team.
That's really small to get kicked off the baseball team for.
Well, see, my mother worked, and she didn't have a car, so she couldn't come to fight those kinds of battles, because I'm sure if she'd come up, I could have got back on the team. But I didn't want to ask her to come to the school when it was almost impossible for her to get there, because she didn't have a car, she didn't drive, and she would have to take off from work. So I just let it slide.
I guess that's the route you had to take, but I think you probably would have done very well if you played baseball a lot longer.
Yeah, I would have. I was always faster than most people, and I could hit, but I didn't stay on the team that long. And I didn't have the tenacity to challenge the school when they would do certain things like that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, if you get in trouble, they give you a paddling, or they would send you home.
And
But
you're talking about an entirely different realm of how schools were run back then.
exactly, yeah,
Especially
they were very racist. And but back then we didn't have the leadership. At least I didn't have the leadership to challenge them. My father, he was never around because he was in the tuberculosis sanitarium for 10 years.
Wow.
So I would see him, even though my mother and father had my mother had divorced my father when I was about 6 or 7. So I was kind of like in a situation where I pretty much had to go along with pretty much the discipline that they were dished out.
Right. Yeah.
But that was fine. Then when I left there, some years back, I was elected to the Indianola High School basketball, you might say, honors.
Okay.
And when that happened, I didn't even go back for it. But I got a letter from them saying that they were going to have a ceremony, but I didn't go back.
So what exactly is that? Like, explain that a little bit better, a little bit more.
Well, that was just kind of a recognition that I was one of the better basketball players that ever played at that school.
Oh, so it's like the Hall of Fame of the school.
Yes, but it was like a junior high school. Okay. But the principal, he was all right, but he was known to tell me to take my wallet out of my pocket and my handkerchief and put my hands on the sink for 2 or 3 whacks of the paddle. And I was always willing to take that than to expose myself and go home and be in trouble.
Two whackers at home at school was way better than an all-nighter.
Oh yes, it was always better. My mother, she wasn't really drastic, but she expected more of me than some of the things that we were getting into.
Right.
And it was usually playful things that we were doing. But one of the highlights of that was when a lot of times we would walk to school or take a bus. Mm-hmm. But we never took a bus home. We would walk, and it would usually be maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 of us walking together. And we were doing something, wrestling or pulling the trick on one another all the time. Yeah. Pushing one another in the bushes or something playful, which was many times what you spent your time in school thinking about what you could do on your way home. So we wasted a lot of time, a lot of the class time. But anyway, when I finally graduated from there, we had an average basketball team. One coach came to scout my team, and I heard him saying as he was leaving that my team was made up of 4 boys and a man. He was referring to me as a man because I was bigger and stronger than a lot of the kids there.
And this is in high school or middle school?
No, this was in junior high school. Yeah, okay. Junior high school.
Okay.
So when I graduated, went to North High School, which was about 6 or 7 blocks from my junior high school. I always had to take the bus because it was too far to walk. Okay. Even though sometimes I would walk if it was like it was snowing and the traffic wasn't running. I'd start out walking, and by the time I would usually have walked all the way to high school to play a game.
Okay.
Usually we practiced right after school, so you didn't have to worry about that. But going to games, if it was a game in the afternoon, several times I walked all the way to school. Okay. And then played. play the game. But we were the first year I played there as a sophomore. My team record was 20. It was 25-2. We lost 2 games.
Wow.
That year. Then my junior year was the year that we were 25-1, and we lost the state championship game in the final. We went to the final. This tournament. It was 4 teams. All 4 teams were undefeated. It was Zanesville, Cleveland East Tech, Middletown, and North High.
Okay.
And we played at the Coliseum at Ohio State University.
But question, because you said you have 4 teams in the league, but everybody was undefeated. Who were you guys playing against?
Well, we had our own teams. So, I mean, we had our own leagues. We played in the City League in Columbus.
Okay.
And we had won all our games there. And then we had several games to get to the state finals, and we won those games. And then and Zanesville they were in another league. Cleveland East Tech, they were in Cleveland, Ohio. They had another league, and Middletown had another league in Middletown, Ohio.
I'm saying so everybody had their own league, and then they won their league championship, and then they came out.
Then they played in the regional tournament and won the regional, and then that's how we ended up all playing in the state. Right.
Now, the game that you're saying that you lost in the championship, is that the game that you went to the reunion for? Or was that your senior year of high school?
No, that was my junior year.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because you were saying you had a conversation. We were having a conversation at some point. You had a ceremony maybe 8 to 10 years ago where you went back to Ohio to
that was the 50-year anniversary.
Okay, now tell us about
because it was called the 50-year anniversary. That was the year that we played the first game. We played Middletown, and they had never lost a game in 3 years.
Oh wow!
And we beat them by 1 point, and which was unheard of in terms of playing high school ball. They had several players, but they had one player named Jerry Lucas, who was about 6'8", and he was almost unstoppable. But we beat them by 1 point because we were faster than they were, and he could not check me around the basket. I was pretty quick around the basket, and I have several pictures where he's behind me. I'm laying the ball up, and I've kind of gotten past him. So we had a go ahead.
I want to know of the realm of people that you played against. Like, give me some of the names. Like, drop names out, because I know for a fact that there is somebody there that we know as a head coach or a famous basketball player from then. Now, okay. So let's go into those names.
Okay. Well, now the people you would know would be the ones I played against when I was in high school. When I was in college.
Okay.
Because when I left North High School, I went to Ohio State University. I wasn't prepared for college because I was a slow reader. I could understand things. I didn't have any trouble understanding things, but I was a slow reader. So when I got to college, it was almost impossible for me to keep up with the classes that I was taking, plus playing ball, and I also ran track. And I ran track in high school too, also. Yeah. But when in high school, the teams I played on, the first year I was on back then you couldn't play varsity. You had to play freshman ball, freshman team the first year. Second year I was on the team with Jerry Lucas, John Havlicek, Mel No, Bobby Knight, let's see some others, Doug McDonald, Don DeVoe. These were guys who I played with when I was a sophomore.
Okay.
And they had won the NCAA championship the year I was a freshman.
Right.
So then I just was moved up to the varsity team when I was a sophomore.
Okay.
However, after my sophomore year, I was declared ineligible because of grades, and I didn't play my junior year. I sat out a year, and then when I came back, I played my would have been my senior year. It was actually my junior year. When I came back, I played my junior year, and we didn't win the Big Ten, but I did play.
Okay.
I was a forward, and I was a starter. The next year, which would have been my senior year, I was elected co-captain with on the team, and I was co-captain with Gary Brads.
Okay.
And Gary Brads was about 6'8". He was thin, but he could shoot very well. And then he and I were supposed to be co-captains for our senior year. However, I was declared ineligible because of grades for my senior year, which leads us into how I got with the Globetrotters. I had received a letter from the Harlem Globetrotters inquiring about my interest in playing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hadn't done anything with it. I received it, but I was really planning on playing my another year in college.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was declared ineligible to play my senior year, I contacted the Harlem Globetrotters because I needed something to do to get away from school. Right. I wanted to get away. I was married and had a kid at that time, but that was probably one of the worst mistakes that I could have made was in terms of I wasn't a good student, but I should have been on the campus. Instead, I was off campus, and I was living with my wife and my son, my oldest son. I might add that I had seen pictures of the Harlem Globetrotters. However, I had never seen them play.
Okay.
So, and when I wrote back to them and said I was interested, and I got a letter back, a contract, and all. I had to sign a contract. Now we get $900 a month. But they paid for everything as far as your travel is concerned and your hotel and all. Right. So when I reported to Chicago, I actually reported the same day that Curly Neal reported for the Harlem Globetrotters. And you know, Curly Neal, if anybody familiar with him, he played with the Globetrotters for 15 or 20 years.
I think he's one of the Globetrotters that they put in TV shows as core group of Globetrotters.
Yes, he would dribble. He wasn't that tall, but he was probably 6 feet tall, maybe. But he was a dribbler, and he could do all kinds of things and lay on the floor and roll over and dribble and all. So, but I only stayed 1 year. I really wanted to get away from home. However, after being there one season, I was asked if I was interested in going to Europe with them for this summer. And I should have said no. Yes, I should have said yes, but I said, let me check with my wife. And she was totally against it. And I didn't want my son to be shifted around. And so I turned it down, which was probably one of the big mistakes that I made because I could have spent the whole summer in Europe. Yeah. So that was really my how I got with the Globetrotters. I should tell you a little bit about my experience with the Globetrotters. Um,
and some of the names you played with, because I know Curly's one of them, but you definitely the core group of people.
Well, they would sometimes. My nickname was Super Rookie.
Super Rookie, okay.
Yes, and I would room. I was with the Eastern team when I started out when the season started, and I was with Meadowlark Lemon, Connie Hawkins, and Hubie, the Geese. Hubie was one of my. I'd room with him a lot, and sometimes Howard Montgomery was another roommate. Sometimes I would have to room with Meadowlark because for one reason or another. And Meadowlark was the kind of guy who liked to have the hotel room 75, 80 degrees.
Right. That's entirely
so a lot of the other guys didn't want to room with him. But when I'd have to room with him, I wouldn't complain. I would just, when he was not in the room, I would just turn the heat down. I would turn it down 1 degree or 2 degrees until I finally got it down to where it was kind of comfortable. And he wouldn't know anything. But if he came into the room, the first thing he'd do, he's turn the thermostat up to 100. Right. And it was very uncomfortable at 100. But I would kind of turn it down until it got to where I could. Now, one of the things that was ideal with the Globetrotters was the fact that we played sometimes 2 games a day. Sometimes we only play 1, but we might be in one location and we might go, say we might be in say LA, and then we would go out and play at different places around LA. Okay. The smaller towns we would play. And so that was okay, because during the day, you'd have a lot of time to do what you wanted to do. And I would go to parks, or I would go to theaters, or I would go to the zoo, or different places like that I like to go. But I have to say that after playing all the years that I had played competitively, playing with the Globetrotters was kind of demeaning to me because of the fact that it was a show. Right. And I was one of the runners. As a runner, you bounce the ball to Meadowlark, keep running, and come back around. He bounces it back to you, and then you go and pass it back to him. And it was interesting in the sense that because I hadn't seen him play, I think the first 3 months that I played with him, I spent most of the time laughing at some of the things that they were doing, and some of the reams, they used to call them reams, that would go wrong. For example, one ream was one where we played like we were playing baseball, and they would pass the ball and then put the ball down a little above the foul line, about the foul circle, I should say, and Meadowlark would kick it to see if he could put it in the basket. But normally he wouldn't come anywhere close. But this one time he kicked the ball and it hit a little kid right in the forehead. So we had to give him a shirt and something, because a bunch of other things. He wasn't hurt. He was more startled than he was injured. Right. And the other thing was that Hubie, he was from Arkansas. He traveled with him for a long time also, but I was only there one season. But he and I, we were the morning that the President Kennedy was killed. Yeah. We had the night before, we had landed in Chicago. Well, I shouldn't say land. We had arrived because we were always on a bus. We very seldom took plane. We were always on a bus. And when we got there, we checked into the hotel. I knew we were going to be there for a couple of days, and so I had got up the next morning and I took some dry cleaning to a cleaners that I wanted to have some dry cleaning done. When I got up, the TV was on. My roommate, he was asleep, and I looked at the TV, and they were talking about a threat to the Kennedy, the president. So took my clothes to the cleaners. I came back. I stopped in they had one of these restaurants in the hotel where you sit on these little booths at the counter. And I sat there and ate breakfast. Then I went up to my room, and as I was getting in bed, they were talking about where the president was going, what he was doing, and then also they announced that there had been threats on his life, and I thought to myself, who would ever attempt to kill the president? Mm-hmm. So I laid back down, and I went to sleep, and then I woke up. I looked at the TV, and the TV was blank. There was nothing on the TV. It was just blank. And I kind of sat there for a minute, looking at see what was going on. And then it came on, Walter Cronkite came on and said that the president had been shot.
Wow. And I'm, to be clear, the Kennedy was one who got shot in his car?
Yes, he got shot in Texas, Dallas, yeah. Texas, and in his car.
The grassy knoll incident. What I just saw recently, they said that they released the footage, the real footage, and they said he got shot by somebody inside of the car.
No, he was shot from a building that, and he was in a convertible.
Yeah.
And so he was shot by the person that I think you're referring to was that one of the Secret Service people who was to guard him was standing on the bumper of the back of the car. When the shooting happened, he saw that the president had been hit. He was trying to get up to where the seats were so he could protect them and his wife. But soon as it happened, then the president's car took off going to the hospital. Okay. And the person you're referring to, he just died maybe about a week ago. Mm-hmm. And he always talked about the fact that he always thought about, could he have done something different to have protect the president? So we took off for about maybe about 7-8 days. We didn't play anywhere. We just stayed in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And then we started traveling again, and we checked into a hotel, and I forget where, but we checked into a hotel, and they had a TV in the lobby, and we were all standing in the lobby, and we watched the shooting of, I forget the person who had been charged with shooting the president. He got shot on TV. We stood there watching because they were bringing him out, taking him to another location, and I forget the names of the people who the guy who shot him walked up to him and shot him. Wow. So that was kind of almost like a conspiracy of him being shot. So then later on, about a week later, we traveled to Washington, D.C. And before we played, myself and Hubie and we went to the cemetery where the president was buried. Mm-hmm. And at that time, you could walk right up to the gravesite. It had a fence around it. And I have a picture of myself and Hubie at the gravesite with a gas light at the gravesite, and we were able to visit the grave while we were in here in DC.
If you're able to see that, I want to see that one day when you get a chance.
Yes, now today you can't do that. It's much more because it's been concrete laid, and so it's much more difficult to get there, to get to the gravesite. You can't drive on the ground like we did. We took a taxi to the actual gravesite and just got out and walked up the hill to where the gravesite was. But today it's a lot more difficult.
Now, at this time, you're still based in Ohio, correct?
Yes. Yes, I was living in Columbus, Ohio. Yes. after the season, I went back home, and then I went back to school. And in December of 1970, I graduated from Ohio State University with a degree in teaching. And so, I taught for several years, but not a lot. Then I went to work for the Boy Scouts of America and worked there for about 3 or 4 years. So that's pretty much how I got with the Globetrotters. But the Globetrotters was kind of interesting to me, because I was out on the road with a bunch of guys who had been out there. Some of them had been out there many, many years. And here I am, 21 years old, and hadn't done any traveling. So I was able to kind of see and experience what some of the things that they did on the road. With the Globetrotters, the first time I went to Vegas, and the first time I went to Reno. Okay. And we went through the mountains one time, going through the Rocky Mountains, and it was so bad that we finally had to stop, and they had to put chains on the bus wheels so that we could travel in the snow. But I think we only maybe one time where something happened with the bus and we had to fly to the site. But most of the time we were on the bus. I figured I was told that we traveled about 60,000 miles that season on the bus, which was a lot of travel.
A lot of traveling, a lot of hours on the road.
Yes.
And a lot of hours on the bus. That's not what we are used to buses looking like now. So I know that was difficult.
Yeah, that bus was funny because it was an older bus, and the veterans sat more towards the front because that's where the heat was, and the rookies, we sat in the back. So we always had a blanket. You travel with a heavy blanket. You put a blanket over when you're trying to sleep or whatever. And so that was a kind of experience also. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun with the guys. It was always something going on. It was if they weren't at a party, they were looking for a party. But we had a lot of fun, and and it was interesting that I didn't know the guys, but by the time I left, I pretty much knew all the guys. I knew. What I did leave out that I was with the Eastern team with Meadowlark and Connie Hawkins, and 2 guys on the Western team, because they had 2 teams at that particular time. 2 guys on the Western team got sent home. They got into something, but anyway, so they were sent home. So myself and Hubie, we were sent from the East team to the West team. Okay. To take their place, and we met them in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
And so the rest of the season, I played with the West team, which gave me a chance to get to know Showboat Hall and some of the other guys that were on the West team. Wow.
So that means when you came to LA, because the Forum was the stadium at the time. So you played. Right.
Yes, we did play there. We were in LA about 4 or 5 days playing, and then we left there and flew. No, I'm sorry. We were in San Francisco first. We played 4 or 5 days with San Francisco, and then we flew from San Francisco. We took the bus from San Francisco to LA. Wow. And we say that we were in LA for 4 or 5 days before we left, going someplace else.
That's great. So now, question: because you did play in these different cities, and you usually probably played in the arena of the NBA team, how much connection did you have with any of the NBA players back then?
Not very much. Every once in a while, you might see them, but we would see different people. Like one time, I saw the Supremes. But we were in a hotel, and we were getting ready to go out, and the Supremes were coming. They were coming downstairs in an elevator, and as we were going out, they were kind of coming into the hotel, getting on the elevator. So I did see them, and sometimes we would see some of the other entertainers, but we very seldom would we run into the basketball players. Now I did. My roommate was Howard Montgomery sometimes, and Howard had played with the San Francisco, which was Wilt Chamberlain's team.
San Francisco was then what?
The Warriors, San Francisco Warriors, I think they were. Yes, and so we were going to be in town. So Howard had called Wilt, told him to come by the hotel for breakfast. So Wilt came by, and about 4 or 5 of us had breakfast with Wilt.
Oh.
Wilt Chamberlain at the hotel.
That's
and
cool.
then so finally he said, well, I got to go. And he gets up and he leaves. And then Howard starts going around everybody collecting money to pay for his breakfast. And then we tease Howard, say, wait a minute, you let the guy who had the most money
walk out of here when I pay.
Walk out of here, now you collecting money for him. But that was a lot of fun. We didn't have we didn't have a lot of contact with the NBA players, even though I think before that period of time, we were the team did play the same arena, but the Globetrotters would play first, and then the NBA teams would play second.
And the same day?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was very common for the Globetrotters and the NBA to play on the same day in the same arena.
Wow, didn't I see a different time? Because nowadays they are completely they don't even cross paths at all, from what I know. But I do know that a lot of the people who are on the globetrotting team usually had the opportunity to try to go to the league.
Yeah, well, I had a tryout with the New York Knicks.
Mm-hmm. What were they called at the time?
Knicks, New York Knickerbockers.
Knickerbockers, because yes. that's an entirely, like, to me, yes, it's the same team, but you call them the Knickerbockers back then. That's an entirely different team to me.
Yes, and also I had a tryout with the St. Louis Hawks, which is now the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, okay.
But they moved from St. Louis to Atlanta, and they were unsuccessful tryouts, but that was all right, because as I got older, I realized that basketball was not what I really wanted to do, but it was something that I did when I was younger.
Yeah, I think you and I came to that same realization a few years outside of college, and trying to do the next thing and trying to figure out what can come next. Because even when I was after we won our championship in 2013 for Bowie State University, I told myself, a step back, during those years before I graduated, I would always see the kids, the people who are outside of college, coming back to the gym to work out and get ready for the next year, get ready for any tryouts, get ready for any overseas opportunities. And I saw them doing this every year, but I never really saw them actually play anywhere else, because either they made a team or they didn't. But I never really followed up with them. So myself, once I graduate from college, after I have my degree, I'm going to give this an opportunity to see what happens with it. If it doesn't turn out to what it was, what I needed to be after a certain amount of time, I need to change directions. I decided to, after 2013, I said, okay, I'm gonna give this 3 years. I gave myself 3 years, and I went to the tryouts in Canada. You and I went to the tryouts in Canada. I went to tryouts out here in California. It was in San Diego at the time he was trying to give me, he was an agent, and he was trying to get people to be, he can represent. And I think I came out here, I did the tryouts. He selected me to be one of the people that he selected, but I think he selected everybody, or at least the top tier of that, because it was only like maybe 100 people, and I was one of the top groups. And then once he signed me, and then the entire year we were waiting for him to reach out to us and figure out what he could do. And every time we reached out to him, he gave us nothing. Like, he had no prospects. He had nobody he talked to. He had nothing for us. So I think after that 1 year, he released us from our contracts. But I was still trying to. We had just gotten back from Canada for the Canadian League. They said they wanted me, but then they kind of like reneged on what they were trying to do because they were saying, well, we want to bring on our Canadian kids, and nothing actually ever came from that. So I think I was in league to go try out for the D League, G League at the time, or D League. I'm not. I think it was D League at the time, NBA D League, and I got hurt working out with that guy in I guess Forestville. He working out with him. I got hurt again, the lower back issue. So after that, and I got the surgery. I said I have a degree. I have an opportunity to explore that degree. Let me do that, and that's exactly what I did. And actually, it turned out well for me up until like the strikes happened and things kind of like um, blew up when it comes to the industry. So yeah,
Yes.
I definitely understand that level of okay, basketball is great. It's got me to this far, but I'm pretty sure this is the end of the road when it comes to.
Right. Well, when I tried out with St. Louis, Lenny Wilkins was there. He was a guard. He was outstanding. Zelmo Beatty, Bill Bridges. These are some of the guys who had been on the St. Louis team, and I felt I had a pretty good shot to make that team. But when I didn't, I felt I gave it a try, and it's time to do something else, because you can spend a lifetime trying to make those teams, and you realize afterwards that your chances of making them very slim, unless you come out of college with such a great record that you can pretty much write your own ticket as far as no cut, or at least getting a contract with 2 or 3 years where you can develop.
Yeah,
but it was all right.
I think you and I's story kind of line up in that way because you were very practical in what you were the end goal. Like you were like, okay, I want to do this thing, and I'm going to give it the best opportunity to make that happen. But because of the circumstances and not having, like, even in my case, the same thing happened where I didn't have the traction that I needed from people who were at that level to say, oh, come, we can work with you because I had the skill.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the people behind me to say, okay, we can bring you here. I think at one point either you put me in touch with or somebody put me in touch with a guy whose son was on playing for Orlando at the time. And I met with him and he pretty much shot down my dreams. But because of where I was in that journey between college and trying to get to the pros, I was still early on and I didn't want to hear it. It's like, you're not even giving me the opportunity. You're telling me to change directions, but I haven't even given it an opportunity to show what could actually happen if I'm given the chance.
Right. Uh-huh. But you learn very quickly that either you're going to make it or you're not going to make it. And if you're not going to make it, it's your best to recognize the fact that you're not going to make it and get out of it and get on with your life.
Yep. Yep.
So that was good.
It was a great
yes.
great thing that happened to me, and I'm glad that between you and Mom had the opportunity to push me in that realm of my athletic, because I needed it and I was actually really good at it. But also you gave me the opportunity to do other things outside of that, like the programs you put me in, the classes you would put me in, like things that the camps that I was involved with during the time. You put me in the position to see what the skills that I had at the moment and the things that I would develop from that to transpire, but also the opportunity to say, okay, there are things that are outside of this that you might be interested in that you need to take an opportunity to see where that can go as well.
Yeah, well, you see, when I came along, we didn't have camps, so our play was at the playground. You spent most of your evenings playing what do you call schoolyard ball, and so that was really kind of the introduction to being competitive. But when you came along, there were camps that you could go to, which were good, but at the same time, you have to recognize if you don't make it, it's time to move on with your life. You know, I mean, I don't regret any of it, except the fact that I think I could have done much better in college if I had been smarter and recognized that not having a family was not the time to have a family.
Yeah.
Because then that's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and also trying to study, trying to practice, and try to take care of your family was really tough.
Yeah, and I'm glad you in that same vein you instilled in me that this is something that you need to take into consideration. You need to focus in on school and focus in on your
right.
Because of that.
Don't make the mistakes that I made.
Don't make the mistakes that I had. And I took that and ran with it, because then with that idea, I took what you said and used the blueprint that you had, and the idea that this is not the opportunity, this is not the time to do that, and don't do the thing that I did, and I applied it to almost everything. My brothers, they all did something. They all were into things that didn't pan out very well for them, and it's like, okay, well, if that happened to them, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Well, usually the younger ones are able to look at their older brothers and see the kind of mistakes that they make. One of the things that I had, I was in college and high school, I was considered a very good rebounder. But when I got into pros, because I was 6'4", at that time, they just didn't believe a 6'4" person could rebound with guys who were 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" years old in height. But and that was one of the things that I thought that would work out with you, because you were bigger and you were taller. But at the same time, it's always going to be something that prevents you from doing what you want to do, or prevent you from not being as successful as you'd like to be. But again, sports is good. I might say also that sometimes sports is not good for guys.
Why do you say that?
Because they get so focused on being a athlete or running track or whatever, that they fail to do the things that they need to do to prepare for the rest of their life.
I 100% agree with that, which is a part of why I said I'm going to give this 3 years out of college, and then from there, if I don't have anything, I need to decide to change direction and still do this if I have the opportunity to, but change directions and get into the next thing, because I see that a lot when it comes to athletes retiring. They've played basketball for so long, they've gotten, and even to the ones who are very successful, they gain this money and gain this notoriety and gain all these things. But the second they get out of the league, their life a lot of times is a downhill dive into like debauchery and not being able to gun carrying and the things that you don't necessarily want to do in life. Instead of having see, okay, I have a skill in this and I have a skill in this. This is a physical thing. This is my brain. And when I get out of this physical thing, which is basketball, I can turn around and use the mental side of what I know to do the next thing.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I wish I could have gotten you to do more was to get a graduate degree. I think if you'd have gotten a graduate degree, you'd have been far better off. But again, that was because sports was in the way. If I could have gotten you could recognize that you weren't going to make it. But you can't do that. You're hoping they make it, but if you recognize if they don't, you need to go have something. And if you can get your education early, your bachelor's and your master's and even your PhD, then you're ahead of the game when you step out of sports.
I agree with that, but I think because of the level, the field that I went into, the graduate degree, I went through graduate school, not the traditional way of doing graduate school with going to classes and but because of what my field is of communications, broadcast, and TV, film, and all those things, a lot of the things that I needed to learn were actively in the job. I needed to be in the job doing it. Right. I think it would in certain areas, like I agree with you, but I think that because of how my industry works, I needed to be working. And because of my idea of how colleges aren't necessarily the thing that will get you to the next level, they are a tool to get you to the next level. They are essentially like I call colleges, if you're not in a certain field, when it comes to nursing, when it comes to being a doctor, when it comes to something that you need to go to school for, if you
A
can,
lawyer,
a lawyer that you
yeah,
need a instructor for,
right,
schools, college, after graduates, after undergrad, it's for those people. College itself is for learning how to time management. It's building connections with people. There is a list of things that colleges, undergrad school is good for, but getting you into a job, depending on your field, getting you into a job right out of school, that's not a thing anymore. It
yeah,
has to be
right. Yes, but one thing about a college is that it does provide for connections, and also it does lead you to, so because there's some companies will hire you because you're from Ohio State, or
yes,
you're from Duke, or you're from, so those are also kind of helps you along.
yes,
But other than that, like you say that you need the training, but a lot of times people don't see the training, but they recognize the school has a reputation of being producing a certain type of a person, and they will usually go to that person, or reach for that person because of the fact that they are at a particular
Now,
school.
granted, Bowie is a good school for what it is, but it didn't have the notoriety that would say,
Right.
"Oh, you went to this school, let me pull you in." Like if I said, "Okay, I went to USC for the same thing," I think I would have gotten an entirely
Right.
different um a response from people about where I went to school and what I did.
Right.
So
Well,
yes,
yes, that's true. Because right now, Howard University is well known, and a lot of people get doors open for them because they are from Howard University. You
exactly,
see,
exactly. And I
uh,
didn't. I had an opportunity to explore those colleges and try to get into those schools, but I had to essentially I had to take the opportunity that was presented to me, and that was Coppin State University at the time, and
yes,
since I spent the 2 years, 3 years playing there, and then graduate and going to Bowie State University. That was my path, and that turned me into the person that I am. But I understood that at a point, Bowie State had a name, but that name was only going to take you but so far. I needed
right.
the skill.
Particularly locally,
Yes,
locally,
it's a really
yeah,
local, so I had to get the skills that I needed in the work field instead of going to a school that would prestigious in the name, but cost me $100,000. I could
yeah,
forego that, get the experience on my own, or get the experience with being on the job somewhere,
yeah.
and gain the notoriety with the people who are in the industry, allowing me to gain that knowledge and gain the connections and gain all the things instead of going to a school where I'm out $100,000 and then got to figure out how to gain the skills, gain the information, gain the
Right. Yeah,
and
you might have done better if you'd had an agent or a manager, somebody who would be able to promote your skills and
yep,
your ability for it.
yep,
And that's something that a lot of people need to consider. If you
yes,
really want to go far, get you somebody who can sell your wares, sell your
yes.
skills and your talent and your schooling to people who are looking for that type of person.
That's really what this platform is for. Like I want to be able to get these stories out because how I went through school and how you went to school and how you got to where you were and how I've gotten to where I was, they're very different, yet they are parallel to each other. And because of that, you want to give people the opportunity to know the stories and then to take this information and say, well, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. This is what will work for me, this won't work for me. But I have someone who's gone through it to know, all right, I need to avoid this completely. I need to focus on this hard and push it to where I needed to go.
Yeah, so today I spend a lot of time reading, and I read books about people who did some things and were successful. For example, I just finished reading John H. Johnson, who had the Johnson Publishing Company and published Ebony and Jet and Negro Digest and some of those. And I was very impressed with his ability to sell. And what I realized that's something that I failed to be able to do, to know how to sell myself. And that's why I say sometimes you need somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah. It took me a while to learn how to sell myself, but being out here and driving was I think that was my grad school in selling myself. Because
Right.
I drive Uber and Lyft. I have people in my car. I have people who are in the industry. I have people who are actors, writers, directors, sound guys, grips, all the different levels and field and jobs that are in my field. They were telling me the things I needed to do, but I was also at the same time telling them what I wanted to do, where I was, and how to, and asking them the question, how do I get to where you are?
Right.
I was learning my elevator speech.
Yes, and it's key to it is what can I do for you? Yeah, that's the key to it. I can tell you, you can be better if I'm with you to do the kinds of things that I'm capable of doing. Those are things that we in my generation, we didn't have that understanding. Is now you find people who are saying that I can do this for you. It's not that I need your job, but you need me. Mm-hmm. And so if you hire me, these are the kinds of things that I can do for you. And that's important. Even in sports.
Yeah.
That you'll learn to sell yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Dad, listen, this was a great talk. I know I'm going to bring you back because you still have wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I can tell you about the 100 jobs I've had over the years.
And I want to get into those because that's another thing that I want to get into. People have to understand that getting into certain jobs, getting into certain fields is not as easy as this is all you got to do.
No.
We live in a time right now where Instagram and social media are big and everybody's on there. A lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, a lot of people are on there saying, this is all you got to do. When all you got to do is not so easy if you have no clue how to.
No, it's not. It's not. It's even more. It's more difficult today because it's more competitive. People are more competitive than they used to be, and the fact is, you can make it, but you got to find a certain niche to go through it. And once you get it, you got to really hustle and get to it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about it.
We definitely talk about it. And then another thing that I want to talk about, and I talked to Mom about it. We're gonna bring you on and have Mom on, and you guys are gonna talk about. And I want you guys because you guys have a great relationship, and I want to talk about how you guys operated in the years between 1980, let's say 4, because you had to get to Maryland and all those things, and around now. We're going to talk about the things that happened before that because you were married before in a marriage for 27 years and now you're with my mom for 36.
36, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about all the aspects of things that happen in the relationships and the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations and the things that you guys did well, the things that you guys struggled with and that you worked on to be better at. I want to have that whole conversation because you guys, that has to be said because I think even in the realm of relationships nowadays, people are. It's this gender war. It's this man versus woman war. It's this black woman versus black man war about what I want and what I'm going to get out of this situation, what I'm going to get out of this relationship.
Right.
And no one's really having a conversation with the people who have been through it and have done it successfully and gotten that story on the table because always and just aside, I always tell people. And I always tell you and Mom, you guys have crippled me, but in a good way. You guys have shown me the right way to do things, the measure twice, cut once method of things that has propelled me to be able to be in a successful relationship. But on the negative side of it, it negatively affects me because there are so many people, and in my case, women in general, that I have dealt with that have no clue how that operates because they didn't grow up with it, they didn't experience it, they didn't have both parents in the home to know, okay,
Right.
if you're gonna deal with someone, you're gonna deal with a man, or if you're a woman dealing with a man, or a man dealing with a woman, these are the things that these two people, entities on either side of the table, are dealing with and are working through together to figure out how to have a successful relationship.
Right. And you go back to the same subject. You say to myself, I can only change me. I can't change someone else.
Yep.
I can only change me. I can only control me.
Yep.
So if I marry someone or be with someone and think I'm going to change them, I made a big mistake. I've got the only person I can change is myself.
Yep.
You know?
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk.
I appreciate this time. This is another episode of that My Conversation Corner with James Dowdy. We will reconvene at another point in time, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Okay. All right. Thank you.